The conductor stopped the train and called a detective, and Detective Christopher Kane came and forcibly removed Mr. Plessy from that train, and he was arrested at approximately 4:35 p.m. at the intersection of Royal and Press Streets in New Orleans. His arrest and subsequent legal challenge to it was organized by the Louis A. Martinet, Albion Torgy, and others in the committee and the Citizens Committee to test Louisiana recently enacted racial segregation laws. And very famously, their challenge, their very timely challenge to the constitutionality of his criminal charge made its way all the way up to the United States Supreme Court, which held in Plessy versus Ferguson that the Constitution permitted legally enforced segregation on the basis of race. The Supreme Court's infamous Plessy decision gave a green light to the enactment of a slew of laws by Southern states that created a Jim Crow regime. Now, after all of this, right over here across the street from me at Tulane and Broad, January 11th, 1897, Mr. Plessy pled guilty in Section A of Orleans Parish Criminal District Court to the crime and received a fine of $25. Mr. Plessy died on March 1st, 1925, still convicted of that crime. He died convicted for the same act of protest that Rosa Parks famously took 60 years later, and for which she is celebrated with monuments and plaques and in museums and in elementary schools all across the nation, and I dare say all over the world. Consequently, and in recognition of the upcoming 125th anniversary of Mr. Plessy's conviction by guilty plea in Orleans Parish Criminal District Court, the undersigned have submitted this application to this board and to the governor, John Bel Edwards, for Mr. Plessy to receive a full gubernatorial pardon. And I would just say before I turn it over, and I'm proud to be here with Keith Plessy and Phoebe Ferguson, whose names represent these historical figures. On January 11th, it will have been 125 years since that guilty plea. And there is no doubt that that he was guilty of that act on that date, but there's equally no doubt that such an act should have never been a crime in this country. This Avery Alexander pardon law, as you so eloquently said, absolutely allows us to come before this body and ask for this posthumous pardon. As I understand it, this law, Avery Alexander pardon law, has never been used. It almost feels as if it was designed for this moment, for this time, for this body. And this is something that is not just important to Mr. Plessy's legacy, to the city and to the state. I believe it is something that is important to this country at a very, very difficult time. We collectively ask this board to recommend this application favorably to the governor. There are small things that we can all do every day to atone for the sins of the past that we had nothing to do with. This may seem small, but it is deeply symbolic. And this request is part of our effort to continue looking honestly at where we have come from, understanding how far we have to go, and pledging that we can all be better and make America better by working together and standing together. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Williams. Thank you. We'd like to hear from Mr. Keith Plessy at this time. Mr. Plessy.
Yes, I'm Keith Plessy. I'm Homer Plessy's first cousin, 3 generations removed. My great-grandfather was Homer Plessy's first cousin. Homer and his wife, Louise Bourdonnais, had no children. 125 years ago, when the US Supreme Court made its decision in Plessy v. Ferguson, it sharply divided America. Since 2009, I have served as president of the Plessy and Ferguson Foundation, alongside my partner in history and my dear friend, Phoebe Ferguson. Together, we have literally flipped the script on Separate but Equal. And we hope to continue that work today with the approval of a full posthumous pardon for Homer Adolph Plessy. I'm extremely proud to carry the surname of Plessy. Long before civil rights activism became a term, Homer Plessy and the Citizens Committee's philosophy and strategies inspired the civil rights movement of the 20th century. On occasion, I've spoken to surviving members of the New Orleans chapter of CORE, whose freedom rides and sit-ins eventually led to the signing of the Civil Rights Act 1964. They personally refer to Homer Plessy as the first freedom rider. I'm also currently serving as chairman of the board for the Leona Tate Foundation for Change. I'm remotely joining you on this Zoom from City Hall in New Orleans, where moments ago we held a press conference announcing the 61st anniversary of desegregation of Orleans Parish Public Schools. The city of New Orleans will be commemorating November 14th. As in 1960 it happened, and it will be remembered as New Orleans Forward Day. On that day, 4 6-year-old little foot soldiers desegregated 2 public schools in New Orleans. Their names are Leona Tate, Ruby Bridges, Gail Etienne, and Tessie Prevost, and they brought the fight home for Homer Plessy. I'm proud of the fact that before Homer Plessy was selected as the plaintiff in the Plessy v. Ferguson case, he was a staunch advocate to keep public schools open for Black children during the post-Reconstruction era. And in closing, I strongly request a full posthumous pardon for my great-grandfather's first cousin, Homer Plessy, simply because when a defendant is charged with a crime for violating a law that promotes and enforces discrimination, that law itself should be declared a violation and a crime. And I'll leave you with the fact that I once met Rosa Parks. And as I kneeled before her to thank her for all her hard work, she said to me, "Get up, boy, your name is Plessy. You got work to do." I'll admit I didn't know what she meant then, but I'm sure now, and I'm convinced that she was talking about the work we're doing today.
Thank you, Mr. Plessy. Thank you. Thank you, sir. Miss Phoebe Ferguson, please.
Morning, and thank you for having us today. My name is Phoebe Ferguson, and I'm the great-great-granddaughter of Judge John Howard Ferguson. I'm also the co-founder and executive director of the Plessy and Ferguson Foundation. Our mission is to honor the work of Homer Plessy and the Citizens Committee for their courage, commitment, and sacrifices in their decades-long pursuit of justice and equality. We are so proud that this application is a joint endeavor between the descendants of both sides of the Plessy v. Ferguson case, and we come together in the true spirit of reconciliation and healing. It is our honor to stand with the descendants of attorney Louis Martinet, Supreme Court Justice John Marshall Harlan, and Mr. Homer Plessy. We also appreciate the support and efforts of the Orleans Parish District Attorney Jason Williams and the Civil Rights Section of the DA's office, led by Ms. Emily Ma, which has greatly assisted us in this effort. We are grateful to the memory of Reverend Avery Alexander, whose courageous work in the civil rights movement of the 20th century led to the passing of this law, which provides a path to recognize and address the injustices of the past. We hope that our efforts on behalf of Mr. Homer Plessy will help to inspire others who have also been unjustly convicted for opposing racial segregation in our state. On behalf of the entire Ferguson family, we ask this board to recommend to our governor that Mr. Homer Plessy be fully pardoned of the crime of violating the Separate Car Act, a law requiring separation of the races in railway coaches, for which he was convicted on January 11th, 1897, 125 years ago. We cannot undo the wrongs of the past, but we can and should acknowledge them and learn from them. Thank you for considering this application today.
Thank you, Ms. Ferguson, and thank you all for your testimony this morning. As indicated earlier, it has been determined that the application submitted on Mr. Plessy's behalf does meet all the criteria set forth by the Avery Alexander Act. So we are ready to call for a vote. Members, a vote of yes is to approve the application and forward to the governor, and a vote for no is to reject the application. So I'll ask staff to call for the voice vote.
Mrs. Jackson?
Yes.
Mrs. Jackson votes yes. Mr. Roche?
Thank you. First, before I vote, I would like to just echo Mr. Williams's statement. I too lived in the shadow of Plessy versus Ferguson. I remember the day in November of 1960. I was a seventh grader when the schools were integrated in New Orleans. I am a son of New Orleans, West Bank, and it is an honor to vote yes in accepting this application and forward it to the governor of the state of Louisiana.
Mr. Roche has voted yes. Mr. Marabella?
My vote is yes.
Mr. Marabella's vote is yes. Mr. Wise?
My vote is yes.
Mr. Wise's vote is yes. And Mrs. Renatza?
My vote is yes.
Ms. Renatza's vote is yes. Madam Chair, the vote is unanimous, 5-0.
Thank you. So to the descendants of Mr. Plessy and Judge Ferguson and all other interested parties who joined in the filing of the posthumous application on behalf of Mr. Homer Plessy, we have voted favorably today and will forward the application on to Governor John Bel Edwards post haste. Is there any other business to come before this body today? Hearing none, we will stand adjourned. The time is 9:22. Thanks everyone for your participation today.